Hi, everyone. Happy Saturday. I decided to do a little live stream today in case you wanted to eat brunch with me or supper or breakfast, wherever you are in the world. I'm Monika Wahi, and I'm just starting this live stream a little early so everybody can connect and say hi to each other and say hi to me. And I can say hi to you. Hi, everyone. Just connecting now. All right, and see it's working. I can update you in this period of time before we start the live stream on a research study I participated in for the application that I'm using to stream, which is called Restream. Restream is an application that is for people like, oh, hi, we have somebody from Somalia on. Hello from Boston to Somalia. Thank you. So I've been in a study where Restream that's put on by Restream, and just to be clear, what this software does is it helps people like me who are not very good at engineering. It helps, like if you want to do something simple, like I'm doing, I'm streaming to YouTube and streaming to LinkedIn from my, my little home on my laptop and my desktop. But what I learned actually from participating in the study, it's over now, um, is that Restream can do a lot of different things. It can actually, do more like, let's say you had like a dance recital and you had a big something. Oh, hello, everybody. Let's see here. Hi from India. Yay. Oh, hi, Matthew. How are you? I haven't seen you in a long time. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for showing up to my live stream. I was just talking a little about this before I started. I'm going to officially start in a couple minutes. Um, about how I was participating in the study. For Zahir is here. Hi, Zahir. I'm glad you were able to show up. I didn't even advertise this very much. I'm so glad you're here. Um, I was I found out the software I'm using can do all kinds of stuff. Not that I'm trying to do all kinds of stuff, but also this is another thing. You know how I've been having trouble with the chat? Like right now, I have this counter on here that says nobody's watching. Well, obviously you're here because you're chatting, so that counter's wrong. And then also I've had live streams where I'm like nobody's here, nobody's chatting, and after I get off the live stream, people email me and they're like, Monica, I was chatting, and so this was coming up also in the participation among the participants because it's a qualitative study, so we were discussing stuff. And so hopefully what we'll have is some improved Restream is really taking off. A lot of people are using it now, and it's really improving fast. But another thing that I sort of got out of discussing this with other people is streaming actually is a lot of work. Like I maybe didn't realize that because I like to watch people who are having fun streaming, like walking around Las Vegas or going to a resort or fishing or whatever. Um, but even those people, they look like they're having fun, but it's a lot of work for them to set up their streams and do everything. And I'm starting to appreciate that more now. I'm sort of giving more likes and thanks, and because now I'm starting to be a little more empathetic and appreciate that. And my live streams are a lot easier. And still, I'm like, wow, it's kind of like holding an event, like a lecture or something. All right. Well, now it's 1 o'clock Eastern time. Time to start the official stream. Thanks to everybody showing up. I'm Monika Wahi, and I'm doing the stream today. I'll give you a little backstory. What I've been trying to do, my goal for this year is to increase my YouTube subscribers. So if you're watching this live or you're watching this recorded, and you like it, that would be awesome that you liked it. In fact, what I would like you to do is check out my other stuff. I have a lot of diverse stuff. And if you like that, then I'd like you to subscribe because I'm going to try to do more live streams so I can talk to you in real time. Um, of course, they're spontaneous. I also make videos that are not so spontaneous so I can plan things and do a good demonstration. But it's nice. I have a whole bunch of different things. So that's what I was trying to do is, I hardly had any subscribers, like 3,000 subscribers. And I have like over 100 videos, lectures and all kinds of stuff. So I was like, I got to improve this. So if you follow my blog, you'll know that. And also I'm a LinkedIn learning author. So of course I turned to LinkedIn learning. If I don't know how to do something, that's the first place I turn. So I took a course and learned some tricks about expanding your YouTube audience, and one of them was just live streaming like this. So today I'm going to demonstrate something. Oh, one of the things that I also learned from that class, that course, which is actually sort of obvious, but you know how sometimes things are obvious, but you need to be taught them. I needed to be taught this. The description to YouTube videos is really important. And I'm telling this to you guys, and you're probably consumers of YouTube. And so you probably already know this. But if you happen to make any videos, like for example, I have a lot of learners who are doing portfolio projects in data science. And I tell them, make a video, showcase how you could communicate about your data and about your project. Well, if you do make a video and you put it on YouTube, it's really important you make the description like nice. What do I mean by nice? First of all, make sure it actually describes the video and put words in it. Like if you have a transcript or anything, um, that what words you said, put a lot of words in it. There's 5,000 characters in a description on YouTube. Put words in it that you say in there, because one of the things that was said in the course is there's really no tags, there's no word description for the SEO to grab onto. So you want to put a description. Another thing that I just think is nice, and now it's easy to do, is to put timestamp links. So when you have long videos, and you'll see, I'm definitely going to do that with this one after it's recorded, is go back and listen to it, and then put in timestamp links for so people can jump around in the video, because I think it just makes it easier to learn, especially if you're studying or like I'm going to demonstrate stuff, and if you're like, oh, trying to do it and you want to go back and look at it, those are really nice. So, in the process of doing that, if you're going to do that to your videos, what do you have to do? You have to watch them again. So, I have a playlist called Essentials of Statistics, which has, I guess, really good videos. I mean, I forgot how good they were. I was enjoying watching them. Um, I'd sort of forgotten making them. I made them in 2015, but they're really good. I think they're really good. And but they're good for people learning statistics um in an applied way. They're not theoretical. They're 100% applied. And I think that's why a lot of people like them, because most statisticians teach like theory, and I get the theory, but it doesn't fascinate me. I'm not into math. What I think is so cool about statistics is when you can apply it, when you can do stuff with it, like actually predict something. So, uh created the videos for my nursing class I used to teach in undergrad, and they loved it. These nurses loved it, and it was all by hand. But I found as time went on, data scientists loved it, and I'm like, you're already doing artificial intelligence. Why you care about standard deviation, how to calculate it by hand? And I realize now when I'm watching it, is like, yeah, this is a good review for a data scientist, because I talk a lot about how the statistical software we're not using in the class would do this, and how we're going to do it instead. Because I would always give them like 5 XY pairs to make a correlation out of, because who's going to sit there and, calculate that forever? But anyway, I guess this is my long introduction way of saying, as I was going through that, I realized how much I use Excel, the random number functions in Excel, for just like basic research administration, not for like fitting regressions or anything like that, or imputing data, just for like basic managing of research. And when I thought of that, I thought back to the last few weeks when I meet with my customers and I work with them. And I realized I'm always doing this with my customers. So I thought, well, why don't I just hold a little tutorial to show people how to do it? Because none of my customers have ever known how to do it, and everybody seems to know Excel. So let me then just show you some tricks. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen here, And we're going to start with, actually, first I'm going to show you where I'm getting the data that I'm going to use to demonstrate. And that is, I'm getting it from ahd.com, American Hospital Directory.com. And the reason why it's important for you to know that is because this is a really awesome website. It says here free hospital profiles. Well, let's say you go here. It's got all this data. These are the hospital statistics by state. Here's all the states, and here are here's the columns about it. Number of hospitals, staff beds, total discharges, patient days, and this is I think these are annually. They're either annually or quarterly because Medicare, which is the federal public insurance for elders, mainly for elders, there's some other groups in it, that requires each of our hospitals to report quarterly data to it. And what ahd.com does, you see, you can log in here. They get this data, which I think it's free, or you can buy, like, you just have to pay for the media that they give it to you on. Like, it's a lot of data. And what they do is they load it in this interface, and you can pay them and log in and do a bunch of analysis. But the reason why I haven't done that is it's more for economics. It's more for economic forecasting. I've logged into it before. I think they gave me a free account to show me something. But this is available publicly to just look at the data. And I find it really helpful to teach when I'm teaching about healthcare. Now, these are all the states in the United States. I live in Massachusetts. So when I taught my undergraduate course in nursing in statistics, I use this a lot for demonstration because it was just like, it's kind of nice because you get like this. First of all, it's public data. You get this hospital name. And actually, if you're curious, you can click on each hospital and it'll bring you to a record. I'm not a robot. I'm just demonstrating this here. And see, this is and again, this is public information, but this is about Brockton Hospital. Here's the website, and I like using this to just teach. To just show when people are learning about hospitals and healthcare in the U.S. to just read about this hospital. Compare the patient revenue and all that. So let's see here. Why is it not going back? Okay, but the data set that I am going to demonstrate with is this one. And so I just wanted to go over the columns here. This says hospital name, the city, and, and then like, so Massachusetts is not a very big state. There are a few big cities in it, and the rest are kind of suburbs, and it's sort of rural area, but not very rural. Um, but there are places where you would have to drive a long time to get to a hospital. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Like, for example, Worcester is a really big city. If you lived in Worcester, you wouldn't have to go very far to get to a hospital. There's multiple hospitals in Worcester. But and Gloucester's not a huge city, but it's a pretty big city. And yeah, you actually pronounce it Gloucester. Like, somebody had to teach me that. But like a city like Pittsfield or Greenfield, they're very kind of small, and they're actually kind of lucky to have a hospital. And as you can see here, 89 beds. It's not very big. And so I just wanted to point that out, that that's the background. Like, I grew up in Minnesota. If we were looking at the list of Minnesota, I'd be telling you different things because that's different geography and everything. So what this is, staff beds, for those of you who don't know, just to let you know, um, you can have beds in a hospital that are not staffed because there's not enough staff. That's a problem right now in the US because of the pandemic. So this just says which beds are in operation that you can support with your staffing. And these are how many people were discharged. So this is inpatient. All the hospitals offer outpatient services, but this is just about inpatient. And this is how many inpatient days. Like, if everybody just had one day, then the discharges would equal this, but some people have more. So, and you can tell, the closer these are to each other, what kind of hospital is it? Is it one where people stay a long time or not? And then this is the gross patient revenue. And don't get me started on that. If you want to know about that, watch my lecture on financing and reimbursement in the US healthcare system. That's in my other playlist, not my statistics one. All right. So I took all these and I put it on in Excel. And what I want you to do is pretend that this isn't public data. Pretend this is more like private data. Pretend these are participants in a clinical trial, and you have done the beginning stuff with them. So what's the beginning stuff? Is you've let me stop sharing my screen. You've already done the beginning stuff, which is you first had inclusion exclusion criteria. And so you went out and you said, well, you have to have a blood pressure between here and here, and you have to be this age or whatever. And you figured out that they were eligible. Then you sat down with them and you went through a consent process where you showed them consent form. You told them everything they're going to have to do in the clinical trial. And they were like, yeah, yeah, I guess so. And let's say that you felt convinced that they understood what they were talking about and what you were talking about. You're going to get them in this clinical trial, and they sign the consent form and they say, okay, uh, here I am. Then you go, okay, I'm going to measure your baseline data. So you measure the baseline data. And then you've got the spreadsheet of data. I guess that was it. The spreadsheet of data. And then now it's time for you to do something with it. So if you're doing an observational study, you might have gathered a bunch of data from these people. Obviously, if it's an observational study, you don't have to put them in any groups, but you have to create a study ID for them. So maybe they have a unique ID, like a medical records number or a social security number that's private and you don't want to use it. You don't want to use any of those numbers. And also, I just found when I worked at the Army, I found people would have duplicate social security numbers. That's not supposed to happen, but people have a typo or there's some issue. Duplicates happen when they're not supposed to happen. That's just life and data science. Okay. So, the best thing to do in a study is assign everyone a study ID. And I mean that even if you're not studying people, if you're studying animals or you're studying hospitals or whatever, assign everybody a study ID. Now, you can do that just by, sequentially numbering them as they consent. But if you just have a spreadsheet of data like we do with these hospitals, how do you assign a study ID? So I'm going to start by sharing my screen here, and we're going to go over to my data. Okay. So what did I do here? So this is all I did was I copied the data and I changed these to like names of columns that look like here. Let me make sure this looks good here. Yeah. Um, Names of columns that like you would have like pat days instead of patient days. Okay. I also added this column. Actually, let me show you how I did it. How I added this column. This is what started out is I just put this up there and I put I highlighted this and I right click. I like to right click and I put insert because if you highlight something and then you right click and put insert, it'll do that. Like if you do that with a row and then insert, it'll insert a row. But now I'm going to do Control Z because I want that. Okay, so I just put the word order because this is the order that they came in on. And this is alphabetical order. So let's say this was like a class or something. Everybody already knows that everybody with last name of AB or whatever's at the top and the Z's are at the bottom. And so it's like everybody knows the order. But maybe I just want to create the order. So I type 1, 2, 3. Then I highlight these three. Okay. Now in Excel, I want you to notice the cursor. Okay. See how it's, hopefully you can see this. This is an arrow. Okay. Now when I go down here, see this fat plus? It's like a fat plus. Now I'm going to go on this corner. Okay, as I go down, see that plus with the barbs on it? Like I call them barbs. They're arrows, right? But if I go over here on the corner, the barbs disappear. See how it's a plus with like no arrows and it's not fat. That's how you do what I call draggy. You can drag it down. We created this pattern and now we're going to drag it down. And you can kind of see that 10, it's like filling them in. Okay. Draggy. Oh, okay. What do we get? 72. So we have 72. Let me save this before it goes away. And by the way, how I got this to be up here, like if you're this is all see home here. Let's see view. Where's it? View. Yeah, view. See this freeze panes? I'm gonna go here and put unfreeze panes. And what like if you do that, see how when I scroll down to 42, like you can't see anything. Okay, if I go back here and I go up and I click on the one, I click below the pane I want frozen. I can go up here and do freeze panes. And then when I go down, it'll stay, which I like because I wanted to. Okay, so I added that. The other thing I added was this column over here called Metro. Now, this is like not real data. I just made this up. I made it up because I wanted to show you a demonstration with something where there was a binary field. So I just made this up. By Metro, I meant, remember how I was saying Worcester is Metro and I'm in Boston, that's Metro. But some of these places like Greenfield is in the middle of nowhere. Or I think so. Maybe you live in Greenfield and you don't agree. But in any case, I just made up this field and kind of flagged things the way I wanted to, just so I could demonstrate this certain thing. Okay. So everybody follow me so far? So what you would do is like let's say that I got this hospital and actually I've studied these hospitals. They have some IDs, like they have organizational IDs and stuff, but I just added this order. I just added this ID to them. But let's say I can't use that ID because we know they're in alphabetical order. And if somebody's study ID is like 37, they know they're in the middle, whatever. We have to do a random ID. Okay. So this is now we're thinking observational study. Monica is going to give them a random ID. Okay. So how would I do that? Well, this is the steps I do. First, I create a new column here, right click, insert, and I call it random. Random. Okay. Then I click into the first cell up here and I type equals rand, open parenthesis and close parenthesis. And that gives me this random number between 0 and 1. Okay, now I'm going to go back up here and I'm just going to hit enter. See that didn't update. If I go over here, see I click on it. Remember it was 0.77 before? Let me do it again. See now it's 0.70. So that it likes to update a lot. Well, I want this random number in all of them. So remember what the trick I taught you. I click on this. See it's a fat plus. Now here's skinny. Now I'm just going to drag it down and it's just going to copy everything. It's going to copy that rand. Number 72. So there's 72 in here. See these random numbers. And they're just going to keep updating every time I do something, like update something else, they're going to change. Okay, now I'm going to, but that's fine. Just it's there. You just leave it. Now I'm going to insert a new column, insert, and I'm going to call this, see how it updated? I'm going to call this study ID. Okay, so this is where I'm going to assign them this ID, and nobody's really going to know what order they were in first. So what am I going to do before I do that? Well, I'm going to highlight the whole thing. That's what you can do up here. And I'm going to go over to data here. And I'm going to do sort. And guess what I'm going to sort by? I'm going to sort by random, right? And I don't even really care what it says. I'm just going to sort it. Okay, now that I'm done, you'll see it's even out of order already, like 5, 9, 02. It just changes all the time. But our original order, you see the 4, 20, 10, 16. So this worked. Now I'm going to put it on the study ID, and the study ID is going to be like 1, 2, 3. See how it keeps updating. Then I'm going to highlight and do my thing, right, where I drag this down. Okay. Okay, so this is how I assign a random study ID to this group of hospitals, which are pretending are patients. Now, if I want to get back the original order, I can highlight up here and I can sort by order and get back the original order. Okay. So, for example, this might be somebody's social security number in your or your medical record number, right? And you put this in here. And then you did this random thing and you sorted them by the random and you had the study ID. And now, so Brockton Hospital, now is going to be known in your study as 39, and ad care is going to know it's 62, and Addison Gilbert's 19, and then you can use. So let's say these were real people, and I said, okay, thanks for being in our study. I'm going to send you through email a bunch of anonymous surveys, like 3 anonymous surveys, like they went through consent, right? And when you go to fill those out, um, you're going to have a link. Just go to the link and enter your study ID as the first question. Well, when you think about that, that's a very secure way of getting research data, because even though they consented, if somebody hacks that data, like you're using SurveyMonkey or something, someone hacks that data and they find out, oh, this person here, study ID 39, has HIV or has, I don't know, cancer or something. They only know it's study ID 39. They don't know its medical record number, whatever, right? And so that's why it's kind of good to do this, like, in general. So let me go back and see if anybody's got any questions. No, nobody has any questions. Okay, so this first part, let me just unshare for a second. So the first thing I did, what I did right there was I just showed you how to put a study ID on. I put a study ID that just said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say you have different sites, like an A and B site, and you want to use like a study ID. You want to do A1, A2, A3, and then B1, B2. Excel will do that. It does this incrementing thing. Just work with it, and that's how I get a study ID. Now the problem with the study ID is this. So I want you to imagine I'm the statistician, and we're doing like a clinical trial. And I haven't really gotten to the randomization yet, but let's say fast forward, we did a randomization, and there's 2 groups, and the people have been placed in those groups, and it's double blind. Okay, so how I've seen a double blind study done is they take people with high blood pressure, and they have 2 drugs. They have like the usual drug that a lot of people take, and this new experimental drug. And what they'll do is the experimental drug, they'll make it so you can't really tell it from the usual drug. And then people who are administrative, what they'll do is package up the drug to give to the participant in these packages that all look the same, but they'll put a study ID on it. So whatever study ID you get, that's your package. It's kind of like a gift or whatever, your raffle gift. But that means that the statistician, me, is going to actually randomize the study IDs on a spreadsheet and say, okay, hand these out, and whatever study ID this person gets says what package they, because that way it can be double blind, right? So the um the clinician can be like, oh, I just pulled up the chart where I'm recording all the patients that are enrolled, and the next study ID is 60. I guess I'm giving that to you, and here's a bunch of drugs, but no one knows, the patient or the participant and the clinician. They don't know what drug it is, whether it's A or B. So I've been sort of behind the scenes when they're trying to set that up, and so uh, but one of the things that they have to do first is realize that if somebody gets sick and goes to the emergency room, we're going to have to unblind them. So we're going to have to figure out what they're taking. And of course, I mean, we have to know for the statistics what ID 60 took. But we're going to also have to know for the emergency room. So I need to keep track of who is ID 60 in case we used to have pagers, I get a page in the middle of the night. I got to go do a unblinding, get up and go pull up the spreadsheet and figure out who is assigned to 60. So how do you do that? How do you arrange all that? I'm going to show you that right now. Is what you'd make is what's called a crosswalk. Um, it's called, so we're going to go back here, and so we're going to pretend that hospital name is like the person's name, and order is like their original number, and study ID is their new number. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this whole page and just do this and Control C. And then I'm going to go over here and paste. Okay, here, let's make it a little bigger. Okay, so, and I'll call this study ID X walk, crosswalk. Okay. See, this random thing keeps updating. So I can get rid of this. Just a right click and delete. And I'm going to pretend this is the person's name so we could figure out, like, we could figure out who to call, who emergency room call, whatever. And I'm going to just erase all this other data. Okay. Okay, there we go. This is the study ID crosswalk. Okay. So right here, we can sort this by anything. Let's sort it by study ID. Sort it by here. My data has headers. And we'll sort it by study ID. Okay, see, it's all kitty wumpus here, but the study ID. So let's say somebody calls me and says, oh, it's terrible. This hospital went to the emergency room. That doesn't make sense. This hospital went to the emergency room, and it's hospital study ID 5. Monika, go figure out who it is, right? And it would be the VA Boston, but it's not really who it is. What I'd be figuring out is there'd be like a column here that would say, or somewhere it would say, I think I would put it in this. I'm trying to remember what I used to do, because this spreadsheet I'm making with this crosswalk, that was so locked down, almost nobody could get at it. And so I think I put the treatment assignment in here. So I would then look up the treatment assignment. I'd say, okay, study ID 5, what did we say, was assigned to placebo, or was assigned, oh, we were doing blood pressure studies. So it was assigned to drug A or drug B. And so, but this is what I also use when I'm just de-identifying. Like, if I was going to do that thing and say, okay, thank you, hospital, for consenting to be in my study. We're going to send you 3 surveys over the next 3 weeks. And here's your study ID. And I want you to enter it and fill out our surveys. And then fast forward, my data analyst comes and says, um, somebody didn't, they filled out goofy stuff. And I'll say, who filled out goofy stuff? Maybe we can ask them. I'll call them and see why they filled out goofy stuff. And if they said 5, I'd look it up and say it was the VA boss. I don't know why I pick on the VA. I used to have a friend who worked there. All right. Actually, I still do have a friend who works there. Maybe she's on here. Are you on here, Heather? Hi. I don't think I even invited her. I should invite her to these things. She's really smart too. She's good at epidemiology. All right. So far, what I've done is I've shown you how to just number rows automatically in Excel. I showed you how to make a random number that just keeps updating. I showed you how to make a study ID, and how to sort by the random number, make a study ID. I showed you how to make a study ID crosswalk. Now, let me go, before we go on, let me see if I have any questions. No, I don't have any questions. Now we're going to move to what if we wanted to randomize, okay, these hospitals, like in the treatment groups, like we're carrying on with the thing. So I'm going to go over here and talk about what, like, actually we could just do it here. There's one thing I wanted to tell you about, and that is RandBetween. So let me just show you why I don't use RandBetween. So I'm going to copy this over here to just show you why I don't use RandBetween. Okay, so well, I won't leave it on here. I'll just demonstrate it. So I'm going to erase these 2 because this is what we started with, is just where I had order. Okay. Now we'll notice that there were 72 hospitals. Now, when I was young and naive, I thought that maybe I could just insert a column and put like a new order, right? And just do RandBetween, right? So how does RandBetween work? You do equals RandBetween, and it's going to give you a random number in between 2 numbers. You see this down here, this top, bottom and top. So if I said RandBetween 5, 10, see, we see 5. Now I'm going to go enter, let's see here, break it down a few. C5, so that's what it does. Okay. So I mistakenly thought I could do rand between like 1 and 72 and just get a new study ID for them. Okay. Like that. But you probably have already figured out the first problem with that. And the first problem with that is that every time I did something, like if I go high, enter, the number changed. Okay. But you can solve that. Like if you ever needed a bunch of random numbers between 1 and 72, you could do this. Then you just copy this. I'm going to put copy. Then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go over home, paste special, and choose values. Because then now, if I click here, this says 24, whereas this says red between whatever. So you can just get a bunch of values, and that's how I do it. I do this and I copy it. It's like I make a little random number machine and then I just get rid of it once I get my random list. But the problem is, actually, let's do that. Let's say, so I said, okay, this keeps updating. Well, I'll solve it by going copy and then just pasting it and doing paste special values, and then it's stuck. It's like there. Okay, so then I got rid of this random one. And I said, okay, yay, I've got this new order. I'll sort by that. So I sorted by it. Let's see here, my data is headers. But as you can immediately see, I got duplicates. And so that's why you can't really do that. Because you need to have a unique ID and you just won't get one that way. So that's something that I wanted to show you is the reason why I do it my way to create this random or the study ID that's random, like it's randomly assigned, is this other way instead of using this rand between. So now I'm going to get rid of this. Although I do want to say, let me just save this here. I want to say that rand between is really useful. Okay. Um, I find it kind of useful for making fake data. Like if you want to create a fake column, um, and you want it to be between 1 and 3, you can say ran between 1 to 3. Like if there's 3 different sites you're doing. Um, but if you do that, again, you've got to copy and then paste values because this random number will just keep updating. Okay, so that's ran between. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about is how you do a randomization. So, remember in observational studies, you'll have a study ID, and you often will have a hypothesis, right? Like I think that, um, for instance, I think that taking this kind of pain medication is associated with lower heart attack risk or something like that. You could have that as a hypothesis for an observational study, but what you wouldn't be doing is assigning anybody to take the pain medication. You'd just be studying people who are already taking it or not taking it. Like there's people with arthritis often take pain medication. So you could get people with arthritis who are not taking it and taking it and then follow them through time. And when you got them in your study and it was time to make a study ID, you could use my method to just give them a study ID. Okay. But now let's turn the tables. Let's say that you're going to study arthritis medication. You want to assign what medication they're taking. Okay. Like whether it's placebo or this pain medication or whatever. If you want to assign it and you want to do a double blind and all that, the I want to remind you about what actually is happening in a clinical trial because it's kind of weird. Imagine there are two women. Let's call them Sarah and Jenny. I have two friends named Sarah and Jenny. Okay, let's say these two women are named Sarah and Jenny. Okay, and they're both going to be in the study for, I don't know, like I guess birth control pills or something. Let's say that we enroll Sarah, she qualifies, and we put her in group A. Then we enroll Jenny and she qualifies and we put her in group B. We are not saying that Sarah and Jenny are different people. What we are saying is Jenny is the counterfactual of Sarah. So we're saying Sarah, let's say we give Sarah placebo. Sarah is the example of Sarah not taking any drug. Then we give Jenny the drug, then we'll say Jenny's the example of Sarah. If there was this time when Sarah split into two people, she could be Sarah without drug, Sarah with drug. This is the time, and Jenny's just representing Sarah with the drug. Okay, so you're probably like, that's creepy, right? Because if you knew my friends Sarah and Jenny, they're really different. Like I can't even imagine one representing the other in a clinical trial. But if you think about it, if you design your inclusion and exclusion criteria for your clinical trial such that you get a very narrow range of people. Like, for example, let's say that you are studying Alzheimer's and you enroll people with a certain level of function, just a certain level. You're getting a very homogenous group. And so if you put one in one group, one in the other, you're hoping they're kind of a mirror image of each other because they're so alike to begin with. So that's what we're doing now is we're randomizing. We're saying, okay, who's going to be the counterfactual of who, right? So let's go back and so remember, why do we randomize? Okay. Well, I talked about Sarah and Jenny, but randomization is really about groups. It's really about, let's say I just take 100 people from Boston. They're going to be all like diverse. Some will smoke, some won't. Some will be obese, some won't be. And whatever my outcome is going to probably be influenced by some of those factors. And we often adjust for them in, you know, analyses, like adjust for obesity or whatever, risk obesity gave or whatever. But when you randomize, when you just roll the dice and you randomly put 100 people in two different groups, you'll be surprised at how similar those groups are. So if I took 100 people from Boston and I randomly put them in two groups and I looked at the mean age, it probably wouldn't be that different. Now, if I took 100 people in Boston who are age 20 to 30 and looked at them and randomized them and looked at the mean age, it would probably be exactly the same. But if I took a broader range, but then if I expand that to 1,000 people or 1,000,000 people, eventually when you split it, it's the same. And that's the whole idea behind machine learning and artificial intelligence, which we're not doing today. All right. And so what I'm going to do, so the thing with machine learning and artificial intelligence is they've got boatloads of numbers. They say, okay, here are all the Visa transactions. Let's split them. And then we're going to study these and apply the model of these. Right. Well, we don't really have the luxury of 1,000,000 transactions if we're studying arthritics and we're giving them some, pain medication, right? Like I'm remembering a real life study. You can read about it. Um, it's one of my publications with my friend Bob, where there were 30 people in the study. We only had 30 people. We're studying pathology trainees, and that's all that there were. And we had to randomize them into two groups because they were going to get two different educational things. And we really wanted them to be like comparable, because some trainees took a longer time than others. And the problem was we had so few people, some of our randomization wasn't very random. So like I've been helping, I have a Chinese Chinese customer, and she's making some materials in Chinese, and I can't read Chinese. And one of them she made was an online quiz. And I was just testing the quiz, to see if it worked. And one of the times I tested the quiz, I got 100%. I can't even read it. And so that's kind of what that illustrates, is that when you do randomization with just a few people, sometimes you can end up with all of a certain group in one spot. Like if there is men and women in that 30, I might end up with all the women in one of the groups if there weren't as many women. You know what I mean? And so sometimes you have to randomize and throw away your randomization. It's like you have to re-roll the dice a few times until you see something. You don't have to do this with big numbers, just the small ones. So I'm going to just kind of show you how to randomize into two groups. And then I got a special treat for you is I'm going to show you how to do a blocked randomization and why you would do that. All right. So let's go back to our fake data. Actually, it's real data about fake participants. Where did I? Okay. So let's go back to our data here. So let's pretend that, so we have the study ID here. Let me just sort by study ID. Um, okay, so we've got all these participants. We have 72 participants. Okay, we're having fantasy. We started a clinical trial, and we said you have to meet this inclusion exclusion criteria, and these 72 participants did, and now we want to randomize them. Okay, so what should we do? Let's go copy this, and I'll put it over here. And the first thing I'm going to do is copy it. I just copied that on here. Okay, well, we already have this random thing that keeps updating. Now, I could get complicated on you, but let's just say we're randomizing them into two groups. Okay. What I could, so I already know that there's 72 of them. So if I was to make the groups half and half, what is that? That's 36 in each group. I'm so bad at math. So I want to put 36 in one group and 36 in the other. So let's just sort this again by a random number, right? Because we can get back the original order, we can get back the study ID. Let's sort by random again. And let's make a new field. We'll call it, actually let me put it over here by hospital site. We'll call it treatment. Okay. And I'm gonna make it be 1 for meaning they're going on treatment, or 0 meaning they're not getting a treatment. Okay. So I want like the 36 of them to be on treatment. So I could just go here like 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just gonna drag this down to 36. Okay. And you can kind of see it. Ooh, that went too far. Like I literally do this. 26, 3. Okay, here's 36. Okay, so these are the first 36 rows. So I'm going to just give them the treatment, right? Because, and this keeps updating, just ignore it. Ignore it. Okay, so they get the treatment. Okay. And everybody else does that. Yep. Everybody else doesn't. So everybody else gets a 0. I'm just copying the 0 and putting it. Okay. And then I can just erase this. I just did that to make sure I got the right one. Okay, so now let's go back and sort by study ID again. Okay, so now what do we have? Let me see this. We still have this random that I just keep leaving there. We have this order, which the original, like their medical record number or whatever, their name, so we know who they are, and we have their treatment assignment. And I guess this is maybe the best time for me to do like this. Copy this, go over to our study ID crosswalk. I'm gonna go there. That's probably what I do. Oh, I can get rid of this here. So this is what I would use then to unblind is I'd have this treatment assignment in there. All right. So this is um uh randomized. Okay. And so what I did with my friend, let me so what I did with my friend is I just took 72 things and randomized them, and I didn't really look at them. If let's One of the things that I noticed when I went through and I flagged them as rural, or no, I didn't say rural, it's metro or not. Later I kind of looked at it and I said, there's a lot of metro areas in Massachusetts. There's not as many non-metro ones. Well, let's say I did this randomization, I looked at it, and then all the non-metro ones ended up in one group and none of them in the other. you'd be like, well, Monica, you should have predicted that because you're the one who did the sampling lecture that says when you do simple random sampling, which is what we're doing, you can get imbalances like that. So that's the problem with simple random sampling. Now, if you only have like one thing I could do is just throw away the randomization, right? And just like I could just sort it again and look at what I got. And so like so that's an option. Just throw away the randomization, get another one. Um and that's what I did with my friend. Like, if all the women ended up in one group, we only had 30. I just did the randomization again. Whatever you do, don't pick. Don't do anything picky. Like, don't use your head. Just use the randomization. Like, like I'll tell you this funny story. The same friend, Bob, one day he's a pathologist. He brought me an Excel sheet that had 40 rows on it, and each one of them was a tumor and had some information about it. And he said, Monica, let's write a paper with my friend. I forgot the friend's name. The friend who had given it to him. And I said, this is great. And he said, but I'm having a problem. Before the friend met me, he wrote an abstract and published it, and he got a mean from one of these variables, and I can't get that mean. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, he just took 40 people with tumors, right? He's like, yeah. So we met with a friend, and I said, okay, when I take the mean, I get all this, but maybe you did a mean of a group, like because they had diagnostic groups. And the friend, I still remember, the friend said, no, I just picked out what values to put in the mean. And we were like, just picked them out? Like you pick flowers or you pick out fruit at the grocery store? I mean, how did you pick them? And he's like, well, this guy was high on this and low on this. He was looking at lab values, pathologist. So I picked him. But this other guy wasn't, I don't know. I didn't think we measured it very well. I didn't pick him. I'm like, you can't do that. You have to use the statistics. You always have to be guided by numbers, even when you're getting rid of people in your data set. So whatever. But so what I'm going to do now is demonstrate what you can do if you've got this problem that I could have with this data set. I'm taking a simple random sample like I just showed you, but there's this characteristic which I'll show you here. We'll look at what I'm talking about. There's this characteristic. This is it, this metro here. And actually, let me just sort by metro and I'll show you. And again, this is not really a real, I just kind of made this up. So you can see here are all the zeros. See, there's only about 27 of these 72 that are in the non-metro area. So I could end up with a bad situation with my randomization. So what I'm going to do, I don't know where to put this. So I'm going to show you how to do a blocked randomization. It's probably easier for me to just show you than to explain what I'm doing. First, we'll just sort this by study ID, right? Okay. Now I'm going to do this thing where I make two lists. I make a list of the metro and the non-metro. So first I'm going to call this metro. I'm going to call this non-metro. Okay, just to remind myself what I'm doing. Then over here, I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to just remove this treatment here because we're going to make a new one. And I'm also going to copy this over here. I'm just copying the whole thing and just getting rid of the random order thing. Okay. Or maybe I want to keep it. Yeah, let me keep it. Let me keep the random order thing. So you never know when you're going to need that. Okay, so that's what I did first. Okay, so that's just a copy. Now my goal is to remove the non-metro ones from the metro ones. So I'm going to go sort this by metro. And see, these are the non-metro ones, so I'm going to go and remove them, all the zeros. Oops. and then right click and delete. Then this one over here, I'm going to sort this by metro. And then remove the opposite, remove the metro ones. Okay, so I split the list. So that's the first thing you do. Okay, so the list is split now. Now, metro is separate from non-metro. There's no copies here. Okay, now I'm going to create a sheet called blocks. And I'm just going to format it a little bit here because otherwise it's totally annoying. We'll just do wrap text here. And I'm going to call this block num for block number. Okay. Then I'm going to call this metro ID and non-metro ID. Non-metro ID. Okay. Now, how many blocks are we going to have? I don't know how many. I'm going to just make 10 for you. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you're probably like, what are you even doing? So I'll show you. Okay. So the goal is to make pairs of metro ID and non-metro ID. But we don't want them to be obvious. So let's go and sort by again, the random ID. That's why I decided to keep it. So I'm sorting both of the metro and the non-metro by the random ID just once so I can put them in a random order. This is going to be random. Okay. So here we have in the metro, the first study ID we have is 70. So I'm going to put that 70. And in the non-metro, the first study ID we have is 44. Okay, so now we created a block. Let's create a few more blocks. So the third one, this is going to be 21 and 37. So 21, 37. Okay. And then this one, it's 62 and 60. Kind of close. 62 and... Okay. Now let's say we filled this in all the way down here. Now remember my problem was that I was getting all, for example, the non-metros in one group. If I pretend these are filled in, if I do a random number here and see, remember rand, that. If I do this, and I'm just going to drag it down here. Okay, I've got 10 units. Of course, I would really have at least 30, but I'm just showing you this. First, I sort by random. And then now I can do the treatment, right? And let's say I do 5 and then 5. See how if these were really filled in, it would be forced to have equal metro and non-metro. And if this were filled in here, the placebo group or whatever it was, the control group would be forced to have equal numbers. It would have 5 metros and 5 non-metros, and it would be totally random. Like they wouldn't even know that that happened. So that's what's called a blocked randomization, and that's why you do it, is to make sure that you have an evenness of something, of a characteristic that it's coming out uneven when you do it the other way. All right. So let me stop here. Okay, well, I didn't get any questions, or if you're asking questions, it's because the chat doesn't work, and I don't know about you asking questions. But anyway, I just thought I'd hold this little live stream to show you these tricks with rand and RandBetween, although I didn't really show you much good to do with RandBetween with this effort. So don't bother with RandBetween for doing this. But RandBetween is a good function. You can use it for other things. But rand, I definitely use Rand, and you see, I spend a lot of time sorting things and creating um, orders and creating columns, um, and I do that in Excel. Now, I use R, I use SAS, and obviously, if we were dealing with a list of transactions, I couldn't be doing this in Excel. What's nice to do in Excel though is you can take some of those transactions, you take like 100 and just play with it in Excel and decide how you want to de-identify or how you want to identify things or how you want to do a black randomization. You can like I always think of Excel as kind of like a little sandbox where I can figure out how I want to do something before I go to SAS or R. So whatever I program, I don't go, "Oh, maybe I should put a random color. Maybe I should throw this away, or maybe I should pair this up." You know, that that process I did where I looked up the block. I was making the block. I looked up the first one. I looked at the second. You could do that so easily automated in um, a statistical software. Oh, I got a comment here. Thanks, Monica. I had to randomize something on the fly just now, and RandBetween is a great function to know. Awesome. I'm so glad. I'm definitely applied, not theoretical. Okay. Awesome. I'm so glad you're already like I'm selling random and I even sold a rand between today. It makes me feel good. All right. So yeah, so as you can see, the things that I'm doing in Excel or that you could do in SAS and R, these things, they're not statistics. Okay. It's not math. It's research administration. And that's often the thing that makes or breaks your study. It's like, do you remember what treatment group you assign these people to? Do you know who these study IDs are? Do you know what's going on? So if you suddenly feel like your heart's in your throat, you don't know what's going on, I suggest you take my data curation course. That's course bubbled up from all the stuff I was like, you guys should have kept track of this. Um, and you're like, okay, I'll keep track of it. How do you keep track of it? Right? Like those spreadsheets I just made, they come naturally to me. They don't come naturally to everybody. So if you want to learn more about things like that, like how do you even keep track of this? How do you even plan this? I just did this demonstration, but there's a lot of things I know how to keep track of. I've done a lot of research administration because I think when you're an epidemiologist, you're just kind of stuck with it. It's kind of like I have a friend who's a musician, maybe he's on here. Um, and when you're a musician, you're stuck dealing with sound. You're just stuck with it. You've got to deal with sound. You've got to protect sound or whatever. And when you're an epidemiologist, not a laboratory statistician or laboratory technician or something, but an epidemiologist, like you're always going to the IRB, you're always writing protocol. Excel is so much your friend. Word is your friend. You're not making beautiful stuff. You're making stuff like what I just showed you. You're doing research administration, which is really important. That's how you make sure you're doing ethics. That's how you make sure you have the right answer. And a lot of people just don't really teach it or they don't really know how to do it. So I'm trying to fill in the blanks with those. All right. Well, thank you to everybody who showed up today and made what's in my audience because I always feel better when there's more people in my audience. If you liked what you heard, either you showed up today or you are listening to this afterwards, and you liked what you heard, please hit the like button. I don't know how to talk because I just talked for an hour. And also, please subscribe because that's actually what I'm trying to do this year is get more subscribers on my YouTube channel. It's been around for a long time. It's kind of like I'd like to think of it as like when you have there's a vacation place nobody's seen before, but it's so beautiful. But then when everybody gets there, it's not going to be so beautiful anymore. So it's still beautiful. It's still pristine. My channel is still like only 3,000 some subscribers. So now is the time to get in there and start making comments and be a star and really support me. All right. Well, thanks so much for showing up. It's a Saturday, and it's beautiful weather today in Boston. So hopefully you'll get out and do something fun. Thanks very much, and I look forward to seeing you in the chat on my next